Good morning, students. Miss Bristow here again, and today I have a special guest star. This is my cat Schrodinger, who is coming to record with me today. And I have another special guest. This is my cat Memphis, who is also recording with me today. So if you hear any cat meows, it's coming from those two. Let's get started with our reading. Oh, see? Cat, special guest star. Okay. So today we are diving into our reading of the play A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. Just to remind you of your goals for the week. Your first goal is to draft your personal working definition of feminism. That's what we talked about yesterday, and that will be due on Friday, March 20th. Your second goal is to read and analyze Act 1 of A Doll's House. We'll get started on that today. And your third goal is to read and analyze Act 2 of A Doll's House. For today, here's your checklist. You're going to read the first half of A Doll's House, first half of Act 1 of A Doll's House, stopping when Dr. Rank enters. And while you're reading, I want you to reflect on a couple of the characters' relationships. Specifically, I want you to reflect on Nora's relationship with her husband. How does her husband Torvald treat her, and how does she respond when he treats her like a child? And then also reflect on Nora's relationship with her friend Mrs. Lind. How does Nora treat Mrs. Lind, and how does Mrs. Lind treat Nora? For our activator today, I've pulled up this YouTube video, which is titled A Probably Inadequate Summary of Ibsen's A Doll's House. It's a really good summary video that goes through the entire... Oh, sorry, cat. That goes through the entire plot of the play. It's not spoken at all. It is just set to music with words across the screen. But it does a really, really good job with some pretty cute animations. So go ahead and watch that video to kind of activate your brains. And then for our work session today, we're going to be reading the first half of Act 1 of A Doll's House. So I have made an annotated copy of the play for you, and I want you, that shows you exactly what you're supposed to read, and I put a bunch of comments in this Google Doc that should kind of draw your attention to a couple things. So I wanted to go through that really quickly. So here it is. Here's your document. And as you can see, I have gone through and commented in the Google Doc different things that you should pay attention to. So like, for example, right here, these stage directions, as you can see, are extremely long, which is a characteristic of the style of the play. This play is a genre called realism. So you'll have all these very elaborate directions and stage settings and things like that, like all of this furniture arrangement and the bookcase with the books on it. If you've ever seen a play live on stage before, or if you remember reading Romeo and Juliet in 9th grade, you might recall that the stage directions are very minimal. It just says something like, you know, night, a street, it's stormy, and that's all you get. We kind of see the exact opposite in this play. A couple of important things to pay attention to in this scene, in this beginning of Act 1. Notice how, I'm pointing at my screen like you guys can see me pointing. Good job, Miss Bristow. Like you guys notice right here where Helmer calls Nora. Helmer is Nora's husband. Helmer is their last name. His first name is Torvald, so their names together, they are Torvald Helmer and Nora Helmer. So Torvald, the husband, is usually credited as Helmer right here in the play. Okay, so Torvald continuously calls Nora these little animal pet names. Squirrel or lark or spendthrift or rabbit, just all these like little cutesy kind of pet small animal names. So that's kind of important, so notice that as you see it throughout this play. Also notice here we've got this little exchange with some macaroons. Macaroons are cookies. Pulled up a picture of them right here that you guys can see. So Nora is eating these cookies that maybe she appears to be hiding them from Torvald, and that's important too, so notice that. They've got all this exchange about money going on. And notice right here what Torvald says. No debt, no borrowing. There can be no freedom or beauty about a home life that depends on borrowing and debt. Torvald is very, very against borrowing. And although it might be true that borrowing money isn't always the greatest idea in the world, this also seems like something that a husband and wife should decide on together and maybe shouldn't be just like dictated by one member of the marriage. So notice that. Here's more of Torvald calling Nora little cutesy animal names, skylark, squirrel. And then more exchanges about money. Here's a vocab word, parcel. It means package. Nora asks Torvald for money for Christmas. That's a little odd. Like, normally I wouldn't ask my husband for money as a Christmas gift. I'd ask him for like a present, but Nora wants money. And then right here, this little exchange about spendthrifts. Sometimes this is translated about a bird in other translations of the play. Like, instead of saying little people, Homer would say, who are the little birds that are always wasting money? So that's another cutesy animal name. Moving on, we have this whole big exchange here. We're back to the macaroons. So Nora is not supposed to eat macaroons. Torvald has forbidden Nora from eating macaroons. Well, we already know as an audience that Nora has been eating macaroons, so there's a little bit of dramatic irony for us there, because Nora straight up lies. She tells Torvald, I have not eaten any macaroons whatsoever, and that's just not true. We saw it happen 5 minutes ago. A little bit of characterization of Dr. Rank right here. He's such a good friend of the family that they just assume he's coming to dinner. They no longer invite him. They just assume he'll be there. An exchange about what happened last Christmas. Apparently Nora was making decorations, and then the cat got in and destroyed them all, so that's going to be important later, so I wanted to point it out to you. And then someone else enters the room. It is Mrs. Lind. Her full name is Mrs. Christine Lind. This is Nora's childhood friend, but they've been away for a long time, 10 years. Christine's moved away for 10 years. Now, they are the same age. They went to school together and everything, but I want you to notice the different ways the two of them act. So Nora says to Christine, you're a little paler, a little thinner, and then Christine replies, and much, much older, Nora. So you can notice how Nora's very bubbly and youthful and childish and vivacious, and Christine kind of not so much. She's definitely seems to be much older, even though they are the same age. So Christine has lived a much harder life than Nora, which we will find out as we go through the play here. Nora acts kind of childishly here, so notice that. She says something like, oh, it's so sad, your husband died, you never have any kids. I have 3 kids, I'll tell you later. And Nora also says, I want to hear about your life, Christine. Tell me all about the past 10 years. But then before Christine can get a word out, Nora's off talking about how her husband just got a promotion. She's really bragging about it. It's interesting because you can see that it's clear that this is what Nora does. Like, she has kind of always been this way, and so Christine isn't surprised by it. Right here we talk about their year in Italy. So this is another really important thing that you're going to need to remember. It's kind of one of the main plot points of the whole play. So at the beginning of Nora and Torvald's marriage, Torvald got very sick, and the doctor prescribed as the cure for the sickness a year-long vacation in the south of Italy. And I don't know what illness that is, but anything that the cure is a year-long vacation in Italy, that sounds pretty awesome, right? Maybe not right at this very moment, but under normal circumstances, a year in Italy sounds great, right? So the thing about years in Italy is that they are very expensive. So the question is, where did they get the money? Because we already know that Torvald is very, very against borrowing money. We heard that earlier. And Nora says she has to do it. Like, they have to figure out how they're going to get the money. And they do come up with the money, and they go to Italy. Oh, here's some more characterization of Dr. Rank right there. We find out a few minutes later that Nora actually borrowed the money herself. More characterization in here. We'll get back to Nora borrowing the money in one sec. Check out right here where Christine says, you know so little of the burdens and troubles of life. It's just really important. Another example of people treating Nora like a child. All right. So right here, Nora says, so the lie has always been that Nora's father gave them the money. And right here we have Nora say, Papa didn't give us a shilling. It was I who procured the money. Well, this is really difficult because a wife cannot borrow in this time period. A wife can't borrow money without her husband's consent. A woman can't borrow. She has to have a man's signature on the loan. So how did Nora get the money? We're going to find that out later, but I promise you it was not very good. One thing here I want to point out, because we're reflecting on the relationships between characters today. Nora says, how painful and humiliating it would be for Torvald with his manly independence to know that he owed me anything. Guys, I don't think it's a bad thing if a husband and wife owe each other stuff. Like, they're married. They're in this together, right? So, feels like there's some weird stuff going on with the relationship here. Or maybe it just seems weird to my 2020 eyes, my 2020 vision, if you will, when it would have been completely normal at the time this play was written. Notice how Nora treats the children here. I couldn't let my children be shabbily dressed. I felt obligated to use up all he gave me for them, the sweet little darlings. That's going to be important. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Nora's relationships with the kids. And here we talk about what really happened with the cat and the Christmas decorations. And Nora says right here, this is really important. Many a time I was desperately tired, but at the same time it was tremendous pleasure to sit there working and earning money. It was like being a man. So I don't know about you guys, but when I first got a job when I was in high school, my very first after-school job, the first paycheck, like I worked so hard for that money. I was a cashier at a hardware store. It was miserable. It was like the worst thing ever. And that first paycheck, opening it up and seeing how much money I had earned, that was the best feeling ever. And that's what Nora's feeling right now. And here we have another new character enter. So this is the last thing I think I want to point out for you today. This guy Krogstad enters, and I want you to notice how both of the women on stage react when Krogstad walks in. Miss Lind, it literally says trembles. She is afraid. She's trembling. And then Nora seems extremely nervous about Krogstad showing up. And they discuss Krogstad a little bit. And this is where we're going to end our reading today. So go through. There's many more annotations in my version than what I've written for you, than what I've talked about here. But that's all we've got time for to talk about in this video. Okay, so don't forget that your personal definitions of feminism are due on Friday. For a closer today, we've got a cool listicle of 10 amazing women who led rebellions. If you're interested in this kind of feminism thing or just looking for something fun to read, this is a pretty cool little listicle that you can go through. Looking ahead to tomorrow, if you want to get ahead on things, tomorrow we're going to be reading the second half of Act 1 of A Doll's House. And we're going to be considering Nora's relationships again with the other characters. How does Dr. Rank treat Nora? How is this different from the way Torvald treats her? How does Krogstad treat Nora? How does Nora act around him? And how is this different from the way she acts with everyone else? And then reflect specifically on how Nora treats her children. Look at the hide and seek scene that you're going to be reading. What does Nora do with the children's clothes? Is she acting like their mother or their friend? How can you tell? And that's it for today, you guys. Get in touch with your teacher if you have any questions. You can find me on Remind. You can email us. You can comment here on the blog. Anything you need to do. That's it. Thanks, you guys.